welcome along to a different form of seminar that we've been hosting for Nankivell. We had a successful seminar, or webinar as we should say, last night with Xero and our JobKeeper, and tonight we're just giving you a little bit of an overview on some farm management software and what Nankivell have been through in the last 12 months and looking forward. This was probably a bit of a delayed couple of seminars. Many of you may have received some invites that we were planning to run a couple of months ago in conjunction with Xero and Figured. And obviously, as you're aware, the world has changed significantly in those last couple of months. So really appreciate that you've all taken the time to log on as opposed to coming along. Hopefully the format will still be quite engaging for you and also ensure that you can get some good information around both Xero and also Figured. I've got a couple of panellists joining me tonight in terms of Sarah Boyce from Xero, Sarah's operating the slides in the background for you, and also to James Ford, or commonly known as Jimmy, from Figured. Jimmy's been a great help to myself and a few others in the business as we've been developing along the path with Figured and understanding more around how their program works and how it can benefit our farming clients. One of the reasons why we've formed a partnership and relationship with Figured has been to provide some avenues for our clients and more so guide them along in their long-term planning with their farming in regards to a few things like succession planning, like putting some investments off farm, growth, so looking to acquire and buy more land, or actually exiting and planning an exit around. And Figured's a tool that we've been using to look at some 5-year planning and look ahead for the business, as well as covering off the yearly stuff around cash flow planning and assessment of the farm. One of the common things that has sort of driven us to this pathway has been around to help out for planning. One of the common questions we see is, obviously we do a lot of our reporting on the financial year. Farming traditionally, particularly cropping, is generally finishing at the end of March, and Figured software in conjunction with Xero allows us to provide financial reports as well as providing an assessment of the farm, for the production year, not necessarily the financial year. So the purpose of tonight is really to give you an understanding about what the program's about. It's going to be very much an overview approach, and then we'd look to try and have some conversations with you if you're interested in more of the detail and how it flows into your farm and your business specifically after that. The Figured tool, so Xero is a tool that we use obviously for our BAS reporting, for our income and expenditure, for maintenance of our records, so the scanning and loading up to the file. So it really helps us out from that point of view. And then the Figured is a tool that then helps us with our cash flow planning, communication with banks, and our scenario planning and assessment of how the business is going. So the two programs work together, we believe, to deliver a really good result for our clients. So what we'll do tonight is we'll involve Jimmy running through some live demonstrations and some reporting and giving you an overview of Figured. From the Nankivell side, we've got a strong team around here that have been using Figured for 12 months. Heath Nankivell is also here as part of the panel. So Heath is a director in Murray Bridge and I'm a director in Naracoorte. And we've also got some assistants through to our Bordertown office as well. Tegan Trant has been doing a bit of work in there, and also Ben Abbott is also getting up to speed with the Figured program as well. So we've got some knowledge and some skill set in the program across the 3 offices. And we've also got here in Naracoorte Leah Kother, Kirsty Grady and Sandra Richards, who are well versed in the Figured program and can provide some support for those wanting to know more information from today. One of the things that I've found really good around the Figured team has been the relationship and also the feedback and assistance that we've had from James or Jimmy. Particularly, I know that they've found the Southeast challenging in the way that we are so mixed in our enterprises. From clients, that run grapes, have some clover seed, have some grain, running sheep and cattle. So we've definitely presented them with a few curly ones over the last 12 months, and I've found their response and their ability to work directly with the client and also with us to help them through that has been great. So without further ado, I might pass over to Jimmy just to start the introduction to to the software, but more importantly, around the outcomes and the reports that it provides for you, how it impacts your business, what information you can get out of it to utilise. Obviously, one of the keys that we speak a lot to our clients about is you want the information available quickly, but you also want to use it. There's no point spending a lot of time putting a lot of information in if you don't use that to drive your decision making. So one of the real keys that we see is finding out what you need in your business, understand what the program can deliver to you. You don't have to utilise it all, but understand what it can deliver to you and how you use that information in your decision making. So I'll be here throughout the session to jump in if you need questions. We will take questions and actually handle them afterwards if they're a bit more in depth, but certainly bring forward some general questions. What I might then do is just before we jump into Figured, just head over to Sarah and just have Sarah explain how the interaction between Xero works, how it delivers some reporting for you, and then also how it steps in syncs with Figured. So I might pass over to Sarah, thanks.
Great, thank you very much, Mark. Welcome everyone. My name is Sarah Boyce from Xero. I have been working for Xero for the last 4 years, and I actually grew up on a farm. So my family run a beef, mixed farming. We also grew wheat and sorghum. So yeah, hopefully you do enjoy today's session. I'm just going to take you over a quick Xero overview, and then I'll pass over to Jimmy to talk about Figured. So what is Xero? Xero is born in the cloud. It is a beautiful, easy to use accounting platform for businesses that you can use on any device wherever there is internet. I currently live in Perth in WA and help out my parents still on their farms with their books who are over in Queensland. We wouldn't be able to do that if it wasn't for the cloud. Xero has more than 2 million subscribers in over 180 countries, with more than 726,000 of those in Australia. Xero offers real-time collaboration with the banks, apps, and your advisors, like Nankivell and Figured. Xero is ATO recognised software for single touch payroll and GST or BAS. And we do have the best in class data protection for your security and privacy. We also have continuous updates and innovation. So let's jump over to some of the cool features of Xero, and then we'll hand over to Jimmy. So Xero does have different products, but within those products, we do have a whole range of features for you to use for your business. So we do invoicing, inventory, payroll. We have bank feeds that can automatically connect to your bank and bring through that bank side of your bank reconciliation. So that's saving you time, not having to key in any manual paper statements. We have a beautiful intuitive dashboard. We have bills and expenses. Xero also has several mobile apps so that you can use and reconcile Xero on the go. We also have quotes and projects. We have fantastic reporting capabilities for you to be able to create custom reports. We also have payment services that can attach to your invoices so that you can get paid faster. Purchase orders, multi-currency files, and of course, HubDoc. We also have our business performance dashboard. You can lodge all your GST returns, fixed asset search, and of course, we also have our free online support. At Xero, we have what we call around the sun support, which means you can lodge a support query at any time, and someone in the world will pick up that support query to help you out. So introducing Figured. Figured is a software that works hand in hand with Xero, exclusively offering livestock, dairy, crop and production tracking, farm budget forecasting and farm planning. Figured only integrates with Xero as they recognise that it's the leading accounting software. On that note, I am now going to pass over to Jimmy, who's now going to take you through and intro you to Figured.
Howdy gang, Jimmy, as I've been introduced. Let me just share my screen and we'll get this underway. So some of you may have seen Figured before in a few different sessions. And we're going to take you through just some of the overriding concepts on this. It's quite diverse software, very powerful software, as you'll see. But certainly one of the key importances of it is how a skilled implementer and advisor like Murray Nankivell, how they utilise the various features in there to really help your business. So let's just jump in and have a bit of a look through it. So the dashboard is where you land on your Figured file to start off with. One of the core things that you'll see right at the top is our date selector, and this is really central to how Figured operates and also how we work with Xero. As Mark said before, one of the key differences with Figured versus standard financial reporting is we can run all of our production reports and all of our farm planning on a period other than the financial year. And that's really important for a lot of farmers, is to align their thinking and align their planning with a period other than the financial year. So on this farm, as an example, I'm running on a calendar year just for simplicity, but we find a lot of farmers, particularly in the cropping space, as Mark said, will run on an April to March year or February to January or something like that. And livestock only tends to be on the financial year, but we're quite flexible in that manner. Additionally, you can see that we've also got a couple of modes up the top here that we can view data in. And this is, again, really important about how we integrate with Xero, in that we can view the data either in just an actuals format. So it's taking the data that's already existing in Figured, existing in Xero, sorry, and then adding some production metrics to it. Or we can build out our plans, but we're not just building out our plans as a standalone plan. So we're not just entering some opening numbers in an Excel spreadsheet or something like that and then going out from there. What we're doing is we're taking the actuals through from Xero, and then we're basically extrapolating out from there to produce a true picture about where we're headed based upon where we are and where we have been. So the dashboard shows a couple of things immediately. We can see our closing cash position. Now more than ever, cash is king. I know certainly even in our business, we're really focusing on that. I'm just going to flick over to another farm here and show another key feature, which again really identifies the power in the forecasting, in that we have an opening position. So the waterfall graph at the bottom here takes us through. At the start of the year, we basically had a budget, and this is what we thought we were going to do. So we're looking at a net profit of $229,000. But then as more information's flowed through from Xero and we've reforecasted off that information, we're then having deviations. Green are good deviations. So we've picked up some additional income here and here. And then we're having some possibly negative deviations in some other categories, which is looking at a closing position, actual plus forecast net profit of $192,000. So all the while the more and more data is coming in from Xero, the bank feeds that Sarah had mentioned before. So really simple data flows, nice true data flowing into Xero as an automated bank feed. Those transactions are reconciled off, flowing into Figured. And that's really changing the underpinnings of our budget as well. Central to Figured is, and the element that makes us farming software is a portion of the product that we call trackers. Now, simplistically, all of every farming enterprise is represented here in a tracker. So you can see I've got my beef cattle and my sheep. I might have multiple livestock trackers, so I might have a breeding enterprise and a feedlot enterprise, and I can transfer cattle between that. And I've also got all my cropping trackers, which are sorted into groups. We're just going to have a little look at livestock trackers to start off with. As I kind of made mention to before, with our with our forecasts or our plans in Figured being based on Xero actuals, as to our all of our livestock movements and all of our grain forecasting and those kind of things as well. So you can see it quite clearly on this page that we've got, for this calendar year, we've got, as at 1 Jan 2020, this is our opening position. This is the livestock that we've got on hand. We've aged some cattle in and out of classes this year. We've sold a few, and this is our current stock on hand based upon actuals as at Jan 2020. We can shift this date out a couple of months, which I might do. And what that's going to do is that's going to update any sales, that's going to bring through any records. With that current position, then what we've got is we've got our forecast entries for the remainder of the year. So we've got some sales that are due to occur later this year over a variety of classes. We're going due to purchase some bulls as well. Really easy to build out these forecasts. It's quite a transactional approach. So we just basically say, when are you going to sell? When are you going to buy? From a forecast perspective. But one of the lovely places we integrate with Xero is when things occur. If we want to create a sale, for example, let's try again. So when we record a sale, when something actually occurs, we can go into Figured, and we can pull it. We're pulling through the Xero chart of accounts. We're pulling through all the contacts that are in Xero as well. And we've got the ability to enter some stock. What are we going to sell? Sell some cattle, enter some weights, which is really important. Entering weights on transactions like this means that we then unlock a whole suite of other reports and some extra granularity into things later on. We can enter our weights in terms of live and carcass. We can enter our sales in terms of total per kilo or per head as well. So I'm just going to do a per head price on this one. Additionally, we can add non-stock lines to the invoice and stuff like that. So as common, there will usually be freight and those kind of things on these invoices. So there's my freight and courier account. And I got charged, say, $2,000 freight on that invoice as well. Now I could just post this transaction, but the really key thing is I can tick this box. And when I click save, that's going to post this transaction straight through to Xero. With a linkage as well. So once that goes into Xero, in Xero, it's actually going to say this transaction was received from the Figured API, and there's a link all the way back through here as well. So really nice interaction between the two trackers when it comes to recording actuals, and we're always sharing data in between us. The crop trackers in Figured are a little bit more advanced, a little bit more flexible as well. Again, some of you may have looked at Figured in the past. This cropping experience was rebuilt last year, and certainly proud to get it into the market now. For the purposes of the crop tracker, what I've done for the time being is I've sorted mine into groups just to make it a little bit easier. So I've got my winter 2020 season in here, and you can see I've got a variety of crops. The crop trackers in Figured are a gross margin by season crop tracker. What that really allows us to do is capture all of the assumptions that are unique to that season. So the area that's used, what's harvested, what costs that are incurred, and the sales cycle that comes off of them. And then once we capture all that detail, both on a forecast and an actual basis, then we can obviously build out some very powerful reports. We'll just have a quick look at how one of these crop trackers works. Again, we're all working on this in a perpetual plan effectively. So I'm looking at a crop tracker here, but because of my views up the top, I could be looking at this with a combination of actual information and forecast information as well. Essentially, the components of crop season, I'll circle back to the metrics up the top afterwards, but what we've done to build out our crop season in here is we've nominated the area that we're going to use, and you can do that on a paddock by paddock basis if you want to go down to quite a lot of detail. However, most users just tend to use a total area. Let's say, for example, 300 hectares of wheat. We can then harvest a bunch of products, and so every item, every crop type has a suite of products that can be produced from it. So wheat produces grain and hay and straw. Same thing for barley, those kind of things. Things like lucerne, we've got seed and hay, obviously. When we're entering our harvests, we've got the ability to create a forecast entry. So at this stage, we've put in that we're due to forecast roughly November in this case. We're going to harvest some grain. We're expecting, let's say, 3 tonnes per hectare at this stage. And what that's going to do is that's going to look at all the area that we've nominated that we're going to be using for our crop tracker. And it's applied the 3 tonne per hectare assumption over the top of it. If I wanted to, I could I could increase some area up and some area down, and we're going to produce an average yield across the board. We can save that harvest, and then as things change throughout the year, what we're going to do is we're going to continue to come back and refine this. So we're creating effectively we're creating a transaction now based upon our best assumptions. We're going to continue to refine that plan. We're going to continue to update things as information changes. So if it looks like that harvest is going to be, say, a month later than what we thought, then we just jump in here and we push it back a month. We might update our pricing, update our yield estimates and that kind of stuff, and we click save. There really is only one working plan within Figured. What that means is we've got a very dynamic planning experience. Costs in cropping can get quite intense. I won't go into a lot of detail here, but we've got the ability to track pre-purchase products. We can certainly allocate costs per hectare or divide totals across the board. We've got a variety of categories that you can see. We produce some quite strong metrics out of this, which will give us cost per hectare, cost per tonne, those kind of things as well. Where this gets us to at the top is some quite simple analysis, but good to get a snapshot about how we're performing. So we'll get into the subtleties of what a plan and an actual plus plan is at the moment, but you can see already at a micro level, we're starting to see that we're seeing some deviations from where we thought we were going to be in here. So we're selling a bit more grain, or we've got some more forecasted sale than what we thought. We're possibly down a bit on, or up a bit on costs, and we might need to look at that. And we've also got the ability over here to just do a quick snap analysis to say, what if the price was $320 a tonne? Press save on that, and that's going to give us an update about what the possible position could look like with this market price column right here as well. So if we needed to do that kind of quick what if analysis, we can do that at a very micro level in here. All of these planning interactions, they all flow into what you'd expect to have in a budgeting software, which is something that looks like a big Excel spreadsheet essentially, but it's much more powerful than that. Up the top here, all of these accounts you can see in bold and all blocked out here. These are all our trackers that we'd set up. So the sheep forecast or the beef cattle forecast we put in previously, they're flowing in here. And these become locked accounts, which means we can't just type in that I'm going to sell $225,000 worth of cattle. Instead, what we need to be doing is building out some assumptions that underpin that. How many head are we going to sell? What price per head? These kind of things. For our more detailed trackers, like our wheat and so forth, you can see in this case, we've got some budgeted income due to come in through later this year, but we've also got some actuals which have occurred in Xero already. So we're looking at 3 months worth of actuals up the top, and we're looking at 9 months worth of forecast. And that produces us with a really solid closing position where we're going to land. So quite granular forecasting at the top, and this is done via trackers. Below that, we've got, again, what you'd expect to see in a planning application. So grid style view with really fast ways to get data in. So you can import data in if you've got existing information in spreadsheets, or you do work outside of Figured. We've also got the ability to copy amounts across or then spread them. So if I wanted to say this amount this month, let's say we might do, it's going to cost us $8,000 this year, and we want to spread that out quarterly, we can do that. So interacting with this is really powerful. There's also additional ability to put in some very detailed transactions with notes and assumptions and those kind of things in there. Our reports are laid out quite quickly. We can collapse everything down to get a summary view about how things are going, or we can expand things out and we can really get into the detail of them. Right down the bottom, Mark said, the kind of key purpose of this primarily, initially at least, is that cash flow planning piece. So we've built out our budget. We may have done that as well. For those of you who've been on Xero for a little while, we've got the ability to grab previous year's Xero data and then import that in as well, so that we can build out our budgets quite quickly. Where we get to down the bottom when we're looking at our budget, I might just flick back and look at a full year budget. So I'll change my actuals back to December. So this is just going to refresh the screen. We're just going to look at just a budget for the time being. So right down the bottom, we've got in all of our income and expenses, which has got us to a total surplus line. Operating surplus line here. And then we've got our non-operating expenses, so things we've categorized to sit there. We've got cash movements to balance sheet accounts. So this will be things like drawings and loans and all those kind of things, capital expenditure. Then we get right down the bottom, you can see we've got forecast GST movements. So we look back to Xero again and we find what's the default tax code for these accounts. And then we take those entries and we work out what the GST movements each month are. And we additionally in Xero, then we sync the reporting period so that we know that you're on quarterly or monthly BAS. So we know that you've got a refund due here or a payment due there. And the last thing we do is reread the bank account from Xero as well. And then we extrapolate out a closing balance. And you can see we've got a couple of months here where we've actually gone into overdraft. So we've got $500,000 overdraft here and a $1 million overdraft there. And that's a evolving balance as well. So as more information comes in from Xero, that closing balance is going to be constantly updated, and that's most evident once I flick. So I might flick this back to here. So let's do actuals to February. Wrong February. Let's try again. Apologies. Crunch the numbers. All right, so we've got a good idea about what's happened with Xero. We've got a really good up-to-date forecast. We've isolated that we've got a few months worth of overdraft we're hitting towards the back end of the year. Once we've seen them, we've also got automatic interest calculations occurring. So we've nominated this account here, interest on overdraft, to be to automatically calculate interest, so we know what our costs, our true costs, are going to be. And this is hitting our cash flow and our P&L. One of the other places you can really evidently see the integration with Xero is on transactions like this. So when we're looking at our planning grid, we've got all these amounts in blue that are flowing in from Xero. We can just simply click these through with our, as provided we're logged into Xero, it'll take us back to a report and it'll show us where these transactions have come from. So if you're not sure about something that's happened, or you're looking in Xero, or looking in Figured, and you're saying that doesn't seem quite right, click the box and that'll take you straight into Xero, and you can actually see what makes up those transactions as well. So it's a truly fluid planning experience because we've always got up-to-date data coming in from Xero, and then we're just refining that forecast in Figured. Now, where we get to another kind of layer of power in this is a concept called snapshots. So once we've got a plan, what we can do, as most of you will do, so let's say you are working in a spreadsheet or something like that, or other systems, generally you'll have a budget and you'll say, this is the final budget. This is what we're going to charge ahead with. This is our best guess of the year ahead. And then you might change that spreadsheet to be read-only, or you'll lock it away and tuck it in your top drawer. That working copy certainly becomes a vital document for comparison. but it shouldn't be something that's forgotten about. It should be something that's refined. So instead, the view we present back to you is always the plan. It's always the current plan that we are working on. But what we've got behind the scenes is then the ability to create what's called a snapshot. What this lets us do is go, right, something's happened, or we want to create a comparison point. So a good example would this be, let's say you meet with a Murray Nankivell team post-April. So we've got some actuals that have occurred in Xero. We might have reforecasted for some changes that have happened. And now what we can do is we can take a snapshot. And this snapshot allows us to, so we'll call this one April reforecast. We can choose when the actuals date is accurate to. We can give it a description if we want. And this just allows us to store a copy of all of the financial data that exists in Figured, all of the production data that exists in Figured as a static comparison point. And we can come back and refer to these snapshots at any point in time, and we could make as many as we like. So they all appear in this snapshots menu down the bottom. And you can see in here that we've got a few different, for our 2020 year that we're currently planning, we've got a few different ones. So early December last year, we did a first draft, and that was approved and then sent to the bank. But then we made some changes. So that might have been an amendment to what we were planting for the year, a change of some areas, that kind of stuff. And then we approved this budget and we made it our final, and this one became our annual plan. So that one becomes effectively our default plan for the year that we're going to charge ahead with. And then we're going to continue to reforecast and update the data, but take copies of that data all the way through. So by the end of the year, you effectively can look back at various points in the year and not only see where you were at that point, but where you thought you were going to be. And this is a completely perpetual experience. So you can take a snapshot now to see where you think you're going to be in 2025. And then in 2025, you can go and look where you thought you were going to land as well. Really powerful feature. It's been about 2 years worth of work went into this, delivered late last year, and we're immensely powerful, immensely proud of it, sorry. We also do not just cash flow budgets, so we also build out a profit and loss budget and a balance sheet as well with this, which is really important as banks are starting to ask for slightly more granular information, particularly when you're looking at, doing some of those expansion or acquisition activities. We're finding that banks are asking not only for longer budgets, but also more and more information as well.
Jimmy, sorry to just interrupt. If I can just talk to our experience as well, what we generally see with our clients over the last 12 months has been quite commonly that original budget for croppers about now, or probably in the last couple of weeks. We'll then probably see a snapshot or just a revisit just after the spring. So based on spring rain and probably just a reassessment of yields and particularly price and maybe some expenditure as well. And then we're also then having a revisit again towards the end of harvest when we've got the yields in, we're in the bank, and we also know just what the price is at harvest time, and then having discussions around, well, do we sell off the header or do we hold and keep in storage? So, we probably see a minimum of sort of 3 snapshots throughout the year. Some people will take more, of course, but yeah, that's generally the trend we've seen over the time, and it's also very good for those that might have some more regular reporting with banks. The banks are very keen to see a lot of those snapshots, and also quite commonly what we've seen is quarterly reporting for cash flow to budget. So a variance report of what's been budgeted to what's actually occurred in the last 3 months, and some commentary alongside it. So the snapshot tool we've found very, very handy.
Yeah, that snapshot as a comparison point is, it started off as our core feature, but what we've seen it evolve into is it becomes almost a way of verifying what we've done. So we've got some data through from Xero, we've reforecasted it. So let's just save that as a comparison point and that one as a comparison point. From a variance perspective, look, it's our most common report. It's the most important one. There's no point having a budget if you're not being able to performance manage against it. That's one of the key issues we see with spreadsheets, is that quite often they're built out as a standalone tool. They don't necessarily use the same chart of accounts that your bookkeeping application is being done in, whereas all of our budgets are being built out with the same metrics, the same transactional information, and the same chart of accounts that Xero's been built upon. So then it's seamless to overlay them. And so with something like a variance report that you can see here, really apparently we can go, we were actual income for beef cattle in April was nothing. We'd forecasted $9,000. Again, it's really simple to look down this and go, red's bad, green's good. Where are we going right? Where are we going wrong? One of the core features, I've managed to skip the slides. I was too enthusiastic and jumped straight into the demo, but one of the core features of Figured is really this collaboration piece. And that we talk about it conceptually from a perspective, we use the word the farming team, and really that's a farmer at the center of this. But we know that farmers very heavily lean on their advisors, and that's not, that's an accountant, obviously, but it's also farm consultants and bankers and agronomists and, animal health experts and vets and all this kind of stuff. And all of those various advisors have an impact on this. So an impact on the farm's health, the farm's long-term performance, that kind of stuff. In the spirit of the collaboration, what Figured and Xero does so well, but intrinsically, is because they're cloud-based, everyone can access this kind of stuff. So everyone's got access to the Xero file, and it's always up to date. Everyone, there we go. Everyone has access to the with the Xero file. It's all up to date, and you can see that we've got everyone working at the same time. Off the back of that, with Figured, everyone's got access to that as well. So, whether it's view-only access and we're all looking at the same fundamental piece of data. So, really, really important. Collaboration is central to all of this. I'll just share my screen again. So in the spirit of that collaboration and commentary, like Mark said, when we're highlighting issues, so when they're doing that reforecasting, they've taken a snapshot, we can then come in here. Some of you on the call may have seen these kind of reports, may have been exposed to them, but we can save a copy of a report. So once we've run the reports, we know we've got the appropriate actuals that have come in from Xero. It's just running. So we've saved a copy of this report, and then really important piece of this in the spirit of the collaboration is that we can go through and we can highlight fields, and we can ask questions. So we might say, is this occurring in May now? All right, and we can add our comments. We can drop down the list, everyone add their comments on, question things. It's a very collaborative experience. And then once we've gone through and we've highlighted issues, we can obviously print these off, have them on the farm table and have a chat, or we can share them out. And this is what we see. We see a flurry of activity every quarter where reports are shared via email. So here you go to the family board, here you go to the banker, here you go to the various stakeholders of the farm. Press share and they'll get a full copy of this screen. So whether they have a login to Figured or not, they'll get a copy of this screen that'll show them, what's happened and where we've gone right and where we've gone wrong. Just have a quick look at some of the other fundamental reports we've got in here. So obviously being a, P&L cash flow and balance sheet forecasting tool, we've got them all central to this. All of those reports can be run on an actual basis with data just from Xero, on an actuals plus forecast basis with a combination of data from Xero and Figured. And they can also be run on a snapshot basis as well. So not necessarily just the plan we've got, but we can also run reports based upon the previously saved snapshots. For more granular reporting, we've got things like our tracker summary report, which really suits livestock. So let's have a bit of a look at this one. So it looks like the livestock tracker. But down the bottom, you can see we get some additional metrics like, average kilos per head, average dollars per head, dollars per kilo, and stuff like that. So the more data we put into Figured, the more analysis we get out. From a cropping side of things, we have only a few reports at the moment because of the brand new work. But again, most of the time this is used as that kind of evidentiary support to go back to the banker and say, yep, we are, the numbers are true. So we're going to look at, our total yield, what our dollars per hectare are, our gross profit per tonne, break-even price for those of you that analyse those kind of things as well. So a raft of production reports, a raft of assumptions, and then obviously with some being again linked to Xero, we've got the ability to do some of those year-end statements as well. The last piece I wanted to tuck into before we get into questions is probably what I think is one of the most important aspects of Figured, and that's the directional planning, and that's why we rely so heavily on our partner network, because it's skilled advisors like Nankivell that make this part of the software incredibly powerful. A scenario plan is our what if tool, and what it really enables us to do is build out some of those long-term directional plans. And then we can stress test those plans. Generally, the way that's done is by having somewhat of a baseline or a status quo plan. So when I say a plan, again, we're still using the Xero chart of accounts here, but we've got the full ability to add on additional information. So we can add in off-farm assets, we can add market values for land, market values for livestock, and stuff like that. So in this plan, so I'm running a 5-year scenario in this case. I've got my rural property with the hectares listed. I've got some additional off-farm assets that I want to be considered to be part of this asset pool. We've got our beef cattle herd in there at our market prices, and we've got some wheat on hand to open this year with. Additionally, underneath that, we've only got our liabilities. So all we've done with these is keyed in what the liability, the current balance is, what the repayment, like the structure it is, whether it's interest only or when the repayments are due, those kind of things, the difference between principal and interest. And then what Figured will do is just calculate the rest. Also the ability to, so we've entered what our cash position is as well. So at the moment we're $347,000 overdrawn, but we've got an overdraft there if we need it. This gets us to an opening position. This is pretty pivotal point for a lot of people to get a really good understanding exactly where they're sitting, and getting an agreement and alignment on that is important. Once we've got that opening position, what we're going to do is we're just going to take it and we're going to stretch it out to the 5 years. So over that 5 years, we're going to continue to pay down the debts. We might buy some more land and that kind of stuff, but we'll probably look at that in a separate scenario. So my debts drop down. I'm going to forecast some income. So in this very simple farm, but we're just going wheat and barley. Roughly, what am I going to produce? What's my income for the year? I'm really easy to key in these assumptions, so I can build out a single year and then I can copy them across as well. So I can build out 5 years worth of assumptions, as almost as quickly as I can build out one. Same thing with the livestock in this. Enormously powerful feature, because what we can do in here is we can simulate herd increase and herd decline and stuff like that really easily. So I've got some cows which produce male and female calves, and then every year they'll age in and out, and we can simulate what happens when if we sell too much of our breeding stock, what's going to happen to our offspring, when are we going to recover. That was an enormously poignant feature with the drought, and then the recovery from drought, having people being able to see when would they get their herd to be back to the size as it was before. Expenses in scenarios are fairly simplistic. Our interest is automatically calculated. Our farm working expenses, we generally start off quite basic. But then when we start to get into more of the numbers, is we look at this summary report, and this allows us to sense check some of the assumptions that we've got, again, so we can look at our carving percentages, we can look at our stocking rates, we can double check our yields and those kind of things. We get a little bit of a financial cash summary. And then down the bottom, we start to look at some of these ratios. Now, these ratios are not necessarily things that farmers think about every single day, but these are the financial metrics that the banks are really looking at these days as well. And these are the things that are going to help, you know, an accountant and a financial advisor, you know, really identify those opportunities about how they can, you know, help you expand and help you find the opportunities for growth. So we can make sure that we're in line with the bank's assumptions for interest cover and debt ratio and those kind of things as well. The final piece of so where scenarios really kind of culminates is on our report page. So we're producing out not only the summary report, which I've just showed you, but long-term P&L, cash flow and balance sheet. So we can look at, from a balance sheet perspective, where are we going to land by, you know, the end of 2023 from a market value perspective? And you know, Mark and his team look really closely at this and aligning all the assumptions that you guys are privy to from agronomists, from Agribank, and all that kind of stuff, and trying to build out a true picture about where you're expected to land, and getting alignment on that. We've got some analysis down the bottom as well that just lets us identify any outliers. So we might have an issue in a certain year of a scenario or something like that. It's basically just a quick glance over test. Getting that baseline view of a scenario is really important. And then what that gives us is, like I said initially, scenarios are our what if tool. So what it enables us to do is, once we've kind of got our baseline plan, then we can plan about all the things that might happen. And we can do that in a really agile fashion. And we're not just talking about this on a micro basis. So, you know, what happens to cash flow in 2 months' time if I don't pay that bill, or if, you know, the price drops by $5 a kilo or something like that. Instead, we're looking at, you know, very high level analysis. So I can grab the baseline plan that's been built out with you and your advisors, and then I can copy that scenario as I've done here. So I've got one called baseline minus 25% for income. We've helped a Tasmanian beef producer do this a couple of weeks ago. In response to COVID, they're basically saying that we have to plan for the worst. So we're looking at 25% drop in income, and grain prices are holding really high, which is terrible for him because he buys in a lot of feed, you know, through September, October, November kind of thing. So what's the worst case scenario? What's the impact going to be on that within a 5-year time frame? And this scenarios piece is so important to us, and it's so important to the long-term position that that farms end up in. And what we find is, once a scenario plan is decided upon and the goals are isolated, then the granular planning that you do in your trackers or on a 12-month basis, in our eyes, and certainly anecdotally from the stories we get back from the field, is that these plans then carry so much more weight. So instead of it just being a budget for the bank, you know, because you have to once a year, this then becomes really aligned to your goals, and something we can stress test and certainly build out collaboratively with your advisors. I might just jump back to the slide deck, Sarah, just to make sure I've covered off everything. Enthusiasm got the better of me.
Whilst you're doing that, Jimmy, it might be opportune time just to mention to people, obviously we're looking at the demo there, which has got quite a lot of detail in it in terms of different asset classes for stock, like a lot of the different ranges of years and aging, and also just to bear in mind that with quite a lot of our clients, that can be simplified quite a lot. So some of them that are on there, you don't have to have that full range. If you just analyse your business with, say, you know, mixed age sheep, mixed lambs, rams, and some wethers, that you can have that as well. You don't have to have that full range of ages and the like. And similarly to with also the cropping side, the assignment of costs. You don't have to head down the path where you assign costs to to your income from your crop. Quite a number of clients have already some agri software around that manages their paddock and also their fertiliser and their application costs. So if you already have that, it doesn't have to be replicated or doubled up. So it's good that Jimmy's gone through and shown the level of complexity that you can go to, but just bear in mind that you don't have to go to that level if you don't use that information. A little bit what I spoke about at the start of the session is understand what information you need for your farm and your business. And Figured does have that full range. You can go to the full complexity and provide all that to you, but you can also bring it back and simplify it a bit more. So don't be frightened by some of the detail there. Quite a number of clients do have it on a far simpler basis, and it does work quite well. And the other thing just to bear in mind is that with Figured and Xero, you're not double entering, so you're not having to enter transactions in Figured and then in Xero. So if you're entering some stock sales or some stock purchases, as Jimmy showed you, you tick the button and that will actually appear in Xero. So you're not having to go back and enter that transaction again in Xero. So sometimes people think there's two sets of information data file that's actually double the work. It's not that case at all. It's just getting your head around what production invoices and what sales invoices need to be entered into Figured, and the rest of it, particularly a lot of all the expenditure, just flows from Xero. So it is quite handy and useful and easy to use from that point of view. Thanks, Jimmy.
Yeah, and that's a really important thing to point out, in that the value that an advisor provides in the implementation of any software realistically, but especially in a budgeting application like this, is Figured's incredibly feature rich, as is Xero. But it doesn't mean you have to utilize all the figures, all the features immediately. Sometimes people can start off with embarking on new software and become quite overwhelmed with the workload that's required to get the value out of it initially. So instead, what our what advisors like Mark and his team certainly do is have a conversation with you and go, look, what things do we need right now to make sure we're solving the problems for right now. And those features are never going to go away. Figured and Xero, as you would have seen with us and other cloud-based software, we're evolving very quickly. So we're always adding new features. We're always making things easier, and those kind of things. So it might be that you don't necessarily employ a feature right now, but you might keep your eye on it, and it might be something that you do next season or something like that. Or maybe by next season, we've got an integration with another party to make these kind of things a little bit easier. So there's certainly opportunity there. I think I'm still here. Mark's frozen on my screen. Yep. Just wanted to conceptually, oh, sorry, Sarah, just back one sec. Just conceptually talk through this slide in terms of a workflow, and this really does talk to the services that then evolve from the use case like this. So we've got data from Xero flowing into Figured. We've got some existing integrations with a few people, with a few companies in the market, which you may have heard about. So AgWorld integration, which is existing, but it's getting redone at the moment, bigger and better. And then a burgeoning relationship with AgriWeb as well, to try and bring in some more granularity there. Not an enormous focus point for this session, but certainly worth flagging. Off the back of that, we've got then, in terms of the cadence that we generally work with, so we usually see production reporting kind of been running quarterly and adding that granularity to it. Then we've got monthly planning and tracking, and that's very much a proactive experience. So I reconcile my data into Xero, code off those bank statements, and then I add and then I look at my variance reporting. I see what's working, what's not, and maybe I reforecast. And the last piece on the right, on the left there, this multi-year business planning piece, that's really that scenario opportunity, and that really comes up in that kind of annual planning. So the scenario planning, tax planning conversation really goes in hand, and all of that data then feeds back into the banking world, providing your insights back to your bank what are we doing? What are your assumptions about us? This is our assumptions about where we're going. And again, complete the loop as our bank data then feeds back into Xero. So really important workflow there, just to talk through how Mark delivers his service.
So I think what we're looking at here on the screen coming through are some Xero reports from a balance sheet perspective, and then also from the depreciation and how that links in with Figured, and also the livestock trading statement you've seen coming through there. One of the things out of Figured is being able to report. We spoke about being able to report on a management basis, which does incorporate also the ability to have your livestock values in there, and movement in livestock, and also production of crops planted but not yet sold. So one of the things we're looking at the moment, just reviewing with a few people, is obviously if I pick the lucerne, we grow lucerne on our farm and seed, and obviously we haven't sold that yet. So we do record that as a production income based on what's been harvested at the current market price. And obviously we're going to hold that for a while and see what we can get later down the track. So one of the abilities, if we were to look at our management profit and loss now, is that we will see the production year, which is very important, I think, to analyse a farm and to say, rather than cash flow when the money came in and out, this is how we viewed the farm. So the interaction between Xero and Figured is that Xero will provide certainly the farming partnership profitability that you'll commonly see in your financial reports, and then the Figured will tie in and be able to show what the management profit has been for the year. There's some interaction that we're looking to build on through Murray and Nankivell going forward in the coming years with Xero in regards to our reporting and how we look at that. If I also talk to something that's in development with Figured at the moment in the next couple of months, is also their statement of position work. So commonly a key part that we have, and which talking to the banks and also talking to our clients, is not just how we're going from a cash flow perspective, but how we're going from a net equity point of view, where we're actually utilising our assets. And part of the scenario planning, as we spoke about, could be succession or could be expansion and growth. So, having that key piece around the balance sheet and also the statement of position work is quite important from our point of view. And the key part of that is to understand what you are trying to achieve, your goals on the farm, your goals in life, and then obviously being able to plan that out. Particularly, recently just looking at land acquisitions and pricing and the main flow on from a cash flow perspective. So obviously, what does that new acquisition bring? Does it drive cash flow? Can we meet the bank requirements? And obviously, from a bank's perspective, they're doing some more ratios around capacity to meet loan repayments, and also how they structure their loan. Rather than interest only, they are looking for some principal repayment over time as well. So being able to scenario plan that and look forward has been very handy from our point of view. Thanks, Jimmy.
There was just a question which Mark's answered, but not sure everyone can see it. So Rita asked just around the data entry piece in terms of the flow back and forth, particularly around sales and purchase of livestock. Just to clarify, Xero's got fantastic data entry capabilities, obviously, with the data flowing in from bank feeds and the HubDoc integration as well. So for non-production invoices, so your Telstra bills and your everything like that, kind of general overheads, all of that stuff just seamlessly flows into Xero, basically. On the Figured side of things, however, we usually want a little bit more granularity to it. So rather than just saying sheep income or something like that, we want to know, how many head, what livestock class did you sell, and what weight. From a cropping perspective, it's usually what season are we going to allocate this back to. So did this lucerne come from the 2019 or 2020 harvest? So where we want a little bit more information on the production side of things, instead we do put that data into Figured first, but it's as simple as ticking a box, and then it will post straight through to Xero with a linkage all the way back through as well. So genuinely seamless data entry. Again, just to clarify the way the two things integrate, so they sync about once a day, if not twice a day. So you don't need to do anything to initiate the sync. You don't need to import them or anything like that. The data just flows. So basically, code off do your bank reconciliation in Xero one day, and that afternoon it'll be in Figured, ready to run your variance report against. The livestock sales stuff with HubDoc is a limited. So HubDoc, as you'll see at the moment, is limited in the amount of detail it can extract from an invoice. So we generally see. So sorry, Rita is asked another question. So sales summaries of livestock sales are uploaded into HubDoc. Does the data, weights and kilos all get shared as well? So no, that's a manual entry situation there. The HubDoc doesn't necessarily have the full ability to extract like all of the granularity from invoices just yet. We're all crossing fingers that they do one day. So, but in the interim, it's as simple as just putting the invoice in detail into Figured. So a manual entry into Figured, and then posting it through. Once it's in there, you can still utilize Xero for the uploading the invoice and storing it and those kind of things as well. Any other questions from the group? We can raise hands in chat if you want to vocalize something, if that's a little bit easier, and then we can turn it on for you if that's your preference, instead of typing away.
Probably one maybe we've covered a bit about communication and open forum with banks and the like. You can actually structure, obviously, as with any software, who gets access to what information. So you can invite people into your file as a read only, so they can just go in there and get out reports that they need. And so you don't need to provide everyone with full access to all of your information, particularly if you've got different type of people with different levels of privacy. And you can also export, as Jimmy said, you can share reports or export reports via email and provide that information to individuals without having to invite them into your file.
Yeah, and the transparency with banks is an interesting thing for us. So we see some resistance about sometimes about giving banks proactive information, I suppose. Generally, they say this is what you need to give us by then, but overwhelmingly, something we see in all markets that Figured and Xero operate together is where the banks have more insight. What they typically have the ability to do is have more confidence in the forecast. They've also got, rather than reactively asking for last year's financials and stuff like that, they can see where you're up to, and then from that they can generally have improve the risk rating of your businesses as well. In terms of costs, so there's a bit of variety in there depending on the Xero plan and Figured plan. So Michael and Rita have both just asked the costs. So all of these are they're on a monthly subscription. So a pay-as-you-go style arrangement. There's some variability there depending on features. So depending on the features required at the Xero end and the features required at the Figured end. But broadly, I'm not too sure where you guys land generally, Mark, around the $100 a month kind of thing.
I would say so to give you an understanding, obviously with the Xero subscription, that varies depending on the amount of invoices you need to enter or the number of employees you have. And if I just went for just a really generic sort of say there's a farm over 5 employees, you probably, for Xero and Figured, you're probably looking at that $95 to $100 a month. But please, we've got a couple of questions there. We can certainly follow up and have a look at what it is from your perspective and what you do need with, particularly with Xero in terms of the level of subscription level for Xero, and give you an estimate of the costing.
Yeah. Anecdotally, with anything like this, we understand that cost is a consideration. With a management reporting application like Figured, ultimately it's going to deliver value to you with the more information you put into it and the more insights you get back. With something like Xero, the value it's going to provide to you is, just an enormous efficiency gains when it comes to, things like payroll, lodging your BAS, bank reconciliation. I've been working with Xero for a very long time through this business and other ones, and there's a million stories out there about how revolutionary Xero has been in terms of the time saving. And then what we find is that people are kind of saving that time, although they're spending a lot of time on manual data entry between systems and transposing things, and then instead with what's probably a better decision rather than just saving that time is then obviously reinvesting that into more insights and how you can grow your business.
And probably just in the chat box there, Jimmy, the question was, is that a combined cost? Yes, it is. Sorry, the range is sort of the general range of 90 to 100 is including both the Xero and the Figured subscriptions in that, which we've generally found when comparing sort of those on Cash Rule Manager, which is some people are moving off that for single touch payroll, because that's a New Zealand product that doesn't support Australian single touch payroll. The pricing is a little bit over that. Phoenix, which is a Phoenix Live product, is pretty similar in terms of the pricing. And there's a few other a few other programs that are actually a little bit dearer on that front. So yeah, we're looking at which programs we like to use and speak to our clients. We certainly do. We do look at the costing side of it and analyse the products, and we're pretty comfortable with where Figured and Xero sit in terms of their pricing to market.
Yeah. Any other questions from the group?
I think there's a question there. What if they're only on a GST cash book, which is obviously no employees and no invoicing? We do need the invoicing ability to link Xero and Figured, I think. Is that right, Jimmy?
Oh, we can still work with a cash book. We just, again, the Figured first workflow generally works a lot better with invoicing, but it still certainly supports a cash book, so we can write default entries to cash book entries as well. So we support everything from a cash book upwards. And we've got lots of smaller producers that are on GST cash books where invoicing and employees aren't required. So certainly supported. Be some savings there if you're on a GST cash book as opposed to a business edition Xero plan. The pricing conversation certainly best to have happen with Murray and Nankivell. Both Figured and Xero, I've got list prices on our website for farmers to sign up direct. But the best experience you're going to get with applications like this is going to be through someone that's skilled at implementing and skilled at advising off this software stack. It's really important relationship to develop. To encourage that, we've got a promo code that's running with Murray and Nankivell, which is $150 off a Figured subscription for the first 3 months. So $50 saving per month is a fairly substantial discount available till the end of July. And accompanied with that as well, those of you that are thinking about this or interested, we understand that end of financial year is a great time to migrate to packages like this. And obviously with the budget season coming up, or in the thick of budgeting and planting, then there's kind of no better time to take the leap to things like this. So we're going to be leading some onboarding seminars off the back of this to kind of get you set up a little bit faster, and make you kind of see the value in Figured and Xero as quickly as possible. And we'll be running them with Murray and Nankivell across the board. I think that's it in terms of questions. Thank you so much for everyone today.
I think the questions are definitely dried up. So yeah, look, I'd just like to thank you all for joining us and you know, taking your time out to understand a little bit more why Murray and Nankivell involved and why we're partners. We're just doing that to help our clients, and we want to try and make sure that we can put some good understanding and planning behind your decisions, and have, you know, give you some real direction, and also understand particularly the cash flow and what your business may look like in 5 years' time. We talk a lot about long-term goals, and we see Figured out in the marketplace as one of the best tools at the moment to actually, you know, formulate and put some reporting and some planning around that. So that's why we've become involved with Figured over the last 12 months. As I said at the start, we found their support really good. There's an online chat bubble on their software that enables you to ask any questions directly to people of Figured. Obviously, we've got our team as well, but just to let you know that, you know, you do have that ability to get support outside of Murray and Nankivell direct to Figured people as well. So you've got both options there, our team that can help, and also to the Figured crew via the website. Very similar to Xero, who have some really good, you know, videos and tutorials on how to do things and really make, I guess, the user experience good, and also the support really good. So, you know, that's one of the keys when we do look at software and products, is to ensure there's a good support network around it, which, you know, there is with Xero and Figured. From today, if there's some interest around and wanting to know a bit more understanding and perhaps delve into more detail about the program for you, please contact us. We'll talk you through it, understand what your needs are, and then, like I said, particularly around some of the pricing, we can certainly give you an understanding of what you need from Xero and from Figured, and give you that pricing, and also talk you through training and the webinar and how that works. So please give a call. Happy for you to call me here at Narracourt, 87657777, or call Heath at Murray Bridge. And also call the crew in Bordertown as well. So Tegan and Ben are available, and we can answer any of the questions you've got and guide you through a bit more detail to make an effective decision about whether Xero and Figured are the right tool for your business. Appreciate Sarah for hosting the webinar. Unfortunately, it's a bit hard to have a few drinks and a few little nibbles with a webinar afterwards, which you would have, but yeah, I'm sure we'll have that in due course when we see you next, face to face. So thank you all for your time. Thank you, Jimmy. Appreciate you jumping on board. Jimmy's based in Adelaide, and Sarah, thank you for jumping on board as well. I didn't realise you had a background in farming prior to today, so thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.